What house were you born and raised in on the island?
Well, I was born in my grandfather's house up on where Madonna lives now, Pat Feste's. And I used to, well, when I was a kid, I stayed there quite a bit with him. But then my dad, we used to stay where Jewel lives now, because my dad's mother owned that house, and he owned the garage across the street. And we stayed there for, God, I don't know how many years it was. But off and on, when I was a kid, I was staying mostly with my grandfather. And then my dad was in the lighthouse. And I think I must have been 7 or 8 years old. And summertime, I'd go over there with him and stay.
And that was Squaw Island Lighthouse?
Squaw Island Lighthouse.
Mm-hmm. And your dad worked for the U.S. Coast Guard Service, right there?
Yeah, the U.S. Coast Guard. His uncle on Macaulay was a lightkeeper there. And a guy by the name, like I told you before, Johnny Check, worked there too. So there's really 3 lightkeepers there.
So what year was that when you were 7 and
Yeah, that
when you first went over there?
26, 27, something like that.
And you would spend the summers there, or?
Yeah, I spent this until I had to go to school.
What do you remember of the summers on Squaw Island? It was pretty lonely,
Yeah, there was nothing to do, walk around the beaches and, just, well, we didn't know any better. We had nothing to do anyway, like the kids nowadays. It was going over there, in fact, was something different, being on my own.
That was a pretty lavish building for its
Yep.
time. It was pretty beautiful.
It was nice, yeah, they're nice buildings.
And was that cleared out around the lighthouse there? Was there any?
Yeah, it was hilly there, but it was all clear. And a nice lawn there. I think Ruth was back there this summer, wasn't she? I don't know how the buildings are now. I didn't get the chance to go back since I was a kid. And then, when I got a little older, able to do work, like in the summertime, we used to help the farmers with the haying, any way to make $1 is what you do. Up the Hannigans and Joe O'Donnell's, and anybody that needed help. And of course, in the wintertime, I was going to school, I'd be out on ice. I had a fish shanty. I'd be out there before daylight every morning until school started fishing. Then after school, I'd be out again. He and little Dan O'Donnell used to, go together. Any fish, any perch 9 inches or longer, we'd sell. Then the smaller ones, what we didn't eat, we'd dress and sell them to people, up in the country.
There were a lot of perch in the harbor at that time.
Oh God, yeah, we'd go out and get a pailful before school even. Yeah.
And you went to the McKinley School in town there?
Yeah. And I went to Sunnyside up on by the churches up there, where it was up there. And I went to the Little Red Schoolhouse, they called it, up in like Tom McCauley's Road there.
Right.
Yeah. Irene Laffinger was teaching there. And I went to school in my grandfather's house in the back room there. Giles McCann taught school there. I went there for a while too. I made about all the schools in the island.
You had, of course, nuns as teachers at McKinley and.
They were, at McKinley downtown, they were all nuns.
Right.
Sister Veritas was the head one. Well, everybody remembers her, I think.
Why is that?
Oh, she was strict. she told you something, you better do it. You'd hold your hand out with, she'd take the ruler and you better not pull it back either. Or she'd start over again from the count. Yeah. But I guess we needed it sometimes.
Who were some of your classmates in those
Oh,
years?
Dorothy Malloy, Emerald, Andy, Doris Larson, and oh God, let's see, there's 7 or 8 in our class. Merrill Billabong. But you want to know who was in my grade?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bernard McCafferty. Pat Malloy, Patricia Malloy, that was, they call her Buccaneer's daughter. And I believe that's about all that was in my group.
So you went through until 11th grade?
11th grade, then I quit in October. 11th grade and went to Squaw Island, the House of David. Worked for the Israelites, digging potatoes and picking beans. I think there was 7 of us from Merrill, Belfi, and me, and Con O'Donnell, Don Burke. I remember Con, every day we'd work. We slept in a big building, and there was 2x4s along the wall, you know. We had bunks. Every day we'd come in from work, Con had put a notch in his 2x4, keeping track of the days he worked. So I don't remember, we were over there 17 days. And so the last day we worked, I put an extra notch on Con's 2x4. I guess when you had him at Swafford, it was just the guy that was running the place for the House of David. I had him, Con, putting there fighting there. He wanted to know how come you all come over here at the same time and you got 18 days and these guys only got 7. Well, Con didn't make no difference to Con. He had 18 notches. Yeah. So they finally got it settled without bloodshed anyway.
They had a lumbering operation there too, didn't they?
Not when I was there,
Yeah.
they didn't know.
So
It's just farming.
Just fine.
Is it the same year you went to?
Yeah,
Never
then
on the boat?
Swafford, the House of David, you know, was their headquarters in Benton Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was only young, I was 17, maybe 16 or something. So they had a boat firm down there. The Israelites had rebuilt a boat and put a new engine in it. Well, I know if I'd go with them to get the boat. I said, right, I never got outside the point in my life. You know, so I know about sailing on the boat. Oh, come on with me. It would be a good trip. So I remember we rode down with the guy that sailed the boat in the North Shore, the little bear they call him, Charlie Ellers. Or not Charlie Ellers, Leroy Ellers.
Leroy.
And Charlie Pishner. So they were going down that way for some reason, and we got a ride. And we had to wait a couple of weeks, the boat wasn't ready, but boy, they treated us like kings there. They had everything there, outdoors pavilions, movie theaters. They had, remember Red Foley and Irene Dunn was there. They gave us a car, a pass for free meals, pass any other places we wanted to go to. And our hotel room, you know, I was hoping the boat would never get ready. So we finally got it ready and we took off. No compass or nothing in it. From Benton Harbor, we come down the coastline all the way to, I think, Leland, or Pentwood, I forget which one now was our last stop. Then we headed across to the Beavers, you know, from there. And we run into a hell of a storm. Right after we left there, the boat didn't gas it up the night before, but we had a barrel on the back end. I was trying to pump gas into that tank of the boat, and it rolling and rolling. Got to off of the head of the Beavers, it was about 3 in the afternoon. And he wasn't pulling into the Beavers. I said, "Ain't you going into the Beavers?" "No, we'll come back tomorrow." I said, "No, no. You're going there now. I had enough of this already." He said, "You might as well come to the island for till tomorrow." He said, "I gotta get a list and pick up stuff and everything." "No way, let me off at home." So he did too, and he was a pretty hot-headed guy, but me and him got along. He's the guy that killed that Indian, you know.
Oh, I don't remember that story.
You know, he accused the Indian of monkeying around with his wife, which I don't think was anything to it. I think the Indian was just drunk, and you know, they get monkeying around, so he took a 2x4 and he killed him. They had the trial in the tavern. Nels was the judge.
That happened on the island.
Yeah, no, it happened on High Island,
High
but they
Island.
had the trial on Beaver Island.
And Nels Lafner was the judge.
Yeah, he was the, I don't know what his rank was there, but he was the one that sentenced them. He found them not guilty,
About
which,
1934.
I don't know what year that was.
When they had the trial in the bar.
In the bar in the Shamrock, yeah.
Yeah.
Did they have a jury?
I guess Nels was the jury.
Judge and jury.
Yeah.
Huh.
But,
What do you remember of the Israelites on High Island? What were they
well, I
like?
can remember them, old Dewhurst, and when I was a little kid, they used to come to our house, and they raised strawberries over there too, and he used to take them over to the island to sell them, you know. But he'd always come to our place and give my mother a couple jars for nothing. But when I worked there was no Israelites there. This was before I went to work there. I was only a kid then when he'd come up to our house, you know.
Well, are they Israelites the same as the house when they came to visit you? They sold their produce on the island or what?
Well, they moved, yeah, they sold
Whatever they raised.
whatever they could sell. Then they moved back to Benton Harbor. The island was just a Indian family living there. Little Joe Kinawabake's, his sister, which was Paul Kinawabake's mother.
Mhm.
I know in evening I used to go to visit them. And little Joe had done a little fishing out there, and he had a little garden that had a lot of wild horses, which later some islanders bought from him. Then they eventually moved to Beaver Island too, and it was vacant for a lot of years. So the Swapper came up and started to farm it.
Who's little Joe to your uncle?
It's his uncle.
Whose uncle is
His father.
So but you're still referred to it as the House of David even after they'd left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, work daylight to dark, $1 a day.
So what did you do after you stopped working there?
We'd go back home then.
Build
Huh?
build roads.
Well, I worked for the county road, and 37 was that the WPA came up. And then I worked on putting all the light poles in for the REA there. Of course, I worked on WPA. I worked for the county road.
When were you in the CCC?
I forget what year that was. I worked for Melky in the sawmills. I worked for Tony Wojan up in the camps and also in the sawmill. I worked for Mr. Young, he had a sawmill over by Art Larson's there below the hill.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for Pat Laffner, hauling logs for the mills.
He drove
I
his
worked
truck
up-
too.
Huh?
He drove his truck too.
Yeah.
Is there a story behind that?
Yeah. Me and
And Lizzie.
I used to, he'd leave me, keep the truck at home if I wanted to, whatever. So one night, me and little Dan we got drinking. He had a rack on it, It was a 1.5-ton truck with a big rack on the back. So we got it over by Gull Harbor there, just driving around drinking beer, cutting through them cedars, and the rack was only on just because he used to take it off, and we put the other outfit on to put the semi on it to haul logs, so the rack wasn't really tied down on it good. So we got between two cedars, and the rack stayed there, and we kept going. We didn't even know it. So the next day, of course, we all had to hang over him and pack him up. And, hey, you pups, where's the rack to my truck? What the hell are you talking about? What you do with my rack? I tried to blame little Dan then, You had the truck. Little Dan already told me. We had to go and find the rack over there through them cedars by Gull Harbor.
The only running you had, Patty, with Lizzie, you had the running.
Oh, that was, Lizzie he didn't come home one night. He stayed with Lawrence Malloy and fell asleep behind the stove. And the truck was stuck down across from Nellie McCafferty's. That's down down around where the power plant is now. She had a house right on the corner. So I was going to work either to the mill or the county road down there. And I seen the truck stuck there, so I thought, geez, he's drunk again, Pat. So I went and I seesawed back and forth and got the truck out. And just as I was coming up, got it out, I was going to take it up and park it up, by the house or something. Here's Pat staggering out of Lawrence Malloy's. So I'll take him home. Because he was still drunk. So I drove him home, and Liz thought, that I was out with him all night.
Mm-hmm.
So we went around the back door, and Pat was rapping easy like this, because it was one of them little cedar knobs that you turn on it just to hold it from the wind blowing. So I give it a good rap. The door went in, the head went off. She was there with the broom, waiting for him. So she swung the broom, she clipped him good with it.
I thought she hit you.
No, she didn't. He goes around in town telling everybody she hit me, She
Well, I
told me,
always
you
thought
get
she
the hell
did.
out of here too, you pup, you. I said, I didn't have nothing but to get his truck out of the sand and get him home here to you. She didn't believe me either, but finally a few days later, she believed me then. Yeah.
You said you worked at Nomad too for a little while.
Yeah, for about a week. I worked with Buddy White up there. He used to work for, that'd be your great-grandfather, Gat Cole. And I forget how,
Oh, you borrowed his new car too, didn't you?
I was short-handed one week there, and then Buddy asked me how long to go up just to bale the shingles, I was only young then, I was too young to be working around saws or stuff, so I said, sure, I think I worked about a week up there. And my buddy was staying at Jack Cowell's place there. He had an apartment right there.
And Julia Cole used to give dinners for the graduates, isn't that right? Every year?
Well, yeah, this one year that Malvina graduated. I didn't graduate. Like I told you before, I just went to 11th grade. What they call those proms they had.
Mm-hmm.
She asked me to go to the prom, so that's where we went up to. Julie was the one that fix the dinner first and had the party there.
That wasn't from Joe Buddy Lloyd's times.
No, I don't. A buddy used to let me use his car too. He had a brand new Ford. What year would that be? I was about 18 then.
34,
34.
34, 34,
I think he had a brand new
36 or
35 Ford, I think it was.
36.
So, Christmas Eve, they had a party in Shamrock. So, me and little Dan had a date with, I think Georgie, and that little Dan was Russian Georgie. And I don't know who in the heck.
You can go ahead and say, I don't care.
No, I don't know who I was with. But anyhow.
I know you were, was it not Anna Mae?
Who?
I don't remember.
I
know
don't
you
remember
said
who
one.
I was with anyhow. Anyhow, we were
Georgie
in the,
might remember.
in the tavern. And little Dan wanted to borrow the car. And him and Georgie, they went over by the Coast Guard station. They had the radio on and the lights on. The car stopped. And Christmas Eve, cold, you know, and the battery went dead. Well, when he wasn't coming back, I got somebody to go looking for him. I forget now who in the hell it was. To drive around looking. We found him over there with the battery dead. So we got it going. I think times we in jumper cars, we pushed them or something.
Crank them maybe.
No, this was a,
Automatic.
yeah.
Starter.
No, it was self-starter. So coming back, icier, it was an ice storm. Coming back around the coast, around where Lloyd's old store was, Dr. Palmer was next door to him. Coming around, she got away from me and spun around right into a tree. And it hit my nose on the steering wheel. That's all that hurt me was, but it knocked me out, see. I didn't know, and I fell over, and little Dan, he had a hat on, and I was bleeding and filled his hat with blood. He didn't get a scratch on, but he thought he was killed when he got out of the car. He didn't know what was wrong with me, shaking the blood all off, and he didn't have one scratch even. So went into Palmer's, and Dr. Palmer got him out of bed. He looked me over, and by that time I got in there, I was come to. And all I had was a cut on my nose. And Georgie, I know Georgie was sitting there. She didn't get hurt either. But poor little Dan thought that the doctor was looking at him, he said, "There ain't nothing wrong with you." Yeah.
In the port car.
So I had the worst part of it to come, to tell Buddy. This was late too, so Buddy was in bed and I had to go and get him up. Don't smash your car up, Buddy. Didn't you just get hurt? I said, no, I got a little, the doctor put a piece of gouge or something on my nose. I said, just got my nose cut. Go to hell with the damn car. That's the kind of a guy he was, you know. He sent the car across the lake, I remember. About here we got a brand new one back. And I remember I said, you know, I wanted to pay some way, to help some way. I said, I got no money, of course, but I know I chopped wood all winter and hauled it in for him, you know, from these behind culls there. Then when he got the new car, he, something was going on. He said, you know, I got a car up there now. Anytime you want to use it, just go ahead and ask me. You can use it. After me wrecking it.
Were there a lot of younger people that had cars on the island?
No, we just had them old Model Ts. They wouldn't go half the time. Jewel had one that we used to take up to Stanley, lived up at where Bud Martin lives now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and not in that house, but there used to be a farmhouse next to it where Stanley's grandfather, Barney McCaffrey, lived. And Stanley had a girl from Toledo there with him, Lula Bell they called her, and Jewel had a crush on her. You'll kill me when you hear this. He used to go up to see her, and he'd take me along, because it'd be in the fall and the winter time. And the only reason he'd take me along is when he gets stuck in the snow to push the Model T, you know. I still tell him that to this day. Peter Johnson used to come home. Jewel and Peter Johnson got in a fight one night underneath the table in the kitchen, and chairs going all over. Peter had a crush on her too, you know. And Stanley didn't give a damn. He'd just sit there and laugh. You know. Yeah.
That's not the girls you and Julie cook for the bar.
Oh no. Oh. Well, the only time we had any fun there was summertime when people would come.
Yeah.
Wintertime you'd have to maybe go up to Shang's or up to Niggs.
Steal
Have
chicken.
7 or 8 people and have little Dan playing the dishpan and somebody else with the mouth organ. And we thought we were having the biggest time in the world. No, these 2 girls come from Charleroi. June Heisey was one. I think Mary Smith was the other one. So me and Jewel got a date with them. We didn't have hardly any money. Jewel had a couple dollars. I don't think I had $1 maybe. He said, no. He called me aside. He said, we're going in the tavern. He said, I'm going to ask you what you want. And you say nothing. He said, I won't have nothing either. I had enough money to treat the girls, you know. Archie comes over. Ladies, I have there. The girls ordered. I forget if they were old enough to drink. I don't think so. Pop or something. I told them I'll have a Strobes. She was trying to kick me under the table, you know. Get outside, you son of a bitch.
You gotta beat that out.
Yeah, he'll remember that.
Oh, that was the main place to congregate then?
The Shamrock,
Shamrock.
yeah. That's the only place they had. Well, the hall.
Oh, the house
that-
parties they had. I know
Well,
that
I
few
mean,
of those.
the hall, they'd have certain doings once in a while. Somebody'd get married or something. Then it used to be a great thing to go to the wakes, you know, when people, somebody died.
And did you go to some of those?
Oh, yeah.
What do you remember of them?
I remember going to Ann Huey's. It was in February, one of the coldest days of the winter. Me and Francis Vell, I was up at my grandfather's, and he came up there. And we had a horse and sleigh, you know. And there was a bunch of cider that had firm in it and was enough to get a jag on, you know. So we were drinking that, and we decided to go to the wake. Cold, like I say, it must have, Christ, the thing was like 15, 20 below that night. So we were putting the horse in Earl's barn there. And Val went in the house, and I went to sleep in the manger of where the horses was, you know, loaded, passed out in there, I suppose. I think about 3 or 4 in the morning, because they sit up all night at them wakes, and you know, they had eats and everything. Suddenly they missed me where I was, so Val come out there, found me in the manger, and they said it was a good thing I was in the manger, because the breath from the horses kept me from freezing to death.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that was the same month Johnny and Andy got married. I remember it went together with... Huh?
How many years was he married?
Oh, God, I don't know. I can remember when he got married. I remember when Charlie Martin got married, they had the dance at the school there by where Ed Palmer lives now.
Hmm.
I was just a kid, but I can remember all that stuff. It seems to me Johnny and Andy got married at the same time Andrew Hugh died.
The Shamrock was originally across the street on the water.
Yeah, It was for a long time.
Is it true that there were people in it when they moved it across the street? There was a crowd in there, or I heard that.
It could have been. I didn't hear that though.
Yeah.
No.
When did they move it?
Okay.
It's been more than 45 years.
Yeah, a long time. I was a kid when they moved it. I can remember being across the street, but it's many years ago. I remember they used to, every night there'd be a fight in there with somebody. Elmer, Sonny Belfi, Joe left, and Everett Cole was sheriff then. I remember him and Joe left there when it was across the street. Got into a fight. Now Joe was quite a scrapper, but Everett, geez, he was a big man. You give him an awful licking one night.
That's not the night that you and Don got out of the car.
No. That's another story. I don't know if you want to hear this.
Sure,
or
go
not.
ahead.
Well, we were going to have a chicken feed up to Shang's, you know. So me and Don and little Dan.
Holiday on
No, he wasn't in the car. It was me and little Dan and Don. Down to old Freddie Sandberg's. He had a coop out back. We got 7 or 8 chickens. Had them in the backseat of Don's car. He had a, what kind of car he had, but we had the chickens in the back seat, and we were driving by town by the tavern. And Elmer and Sonny Belfi were fighting out front. Elmer had Sonny down, and he was kicking the hell out of him, right in the head, right in front of out in the street. So Don said, geez, I'd better get out there and stop this or you'll kill him. So he opened the door and the damn chickens got out. Started towards the beach and me after. And Don up trying to stop the fight, of course. Little Dan going one way, me the other. And we caught some of them, but some of them got away on us. But anyhow, Stanley found out that they were having the chicken feed. After they got the thing settled down, Don was wheeling up with the chickens we had. So some more found out we were having the fire. They all come out, so we didn't have enough chickens. So Stanley said to me, he said, let's go downtown, we'll get some more chickens. So we said, okay. And Sned was doing the cooking. Ed Green, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So me and Stanley went out. We made believe we were going down with them. We went out to Sned's coop, got some of his. Took 2 or 3 of them and killed them, you know, and waited long enough that we could have made the trip to town, come in. Sned was plucking them, and he said, this looks like one of my Plymouth Rocks. Which it was, too. Stanley, no, that's, I ain't gonna tell you where we got it, but that's not yours.
How did he get the nickname Sned?
I don't know how they got that name. There were so many Greens up there. They had to put nicknames on, I guess, to know who you were talking about when you mentioned Green. Ned and Dan is what his name was.
And who was it, Irene?
And she was teaching there. I went to school. She taught me up there at the Lutheran school.
Somebody called them the Shangs.
Yeah, Don, Sned and Dan Green, or Shang, Sned and Shang, wherever Shang came from, I don't know. His name was Dan, but Irene stayed with them. She's related to them. So they came down to the school, and it was recess time. We were all out playing ball or something. They talked to Don, and Don told me, he said, go and tell Irene that the Shangs want to see her out at the car. So I'm not knowing no better, you know. And I went out and told her that the Shangs want to see you. Oh, Jesus, did she light into me. She said, I want you to know that their names is Ed and Dan Green, not this. I said, well, that's what Don told me. So before she died here, you know, she lived in Charlotte, up over Brown's Garage there or someplace. I used to stop when I go to Thailand every summer. I used to stop and see her. bring that up to her about the shanks, and she even as bad as she was feeling, you know, she wasn't in good health. She'd have to laugh. I said, you know who it was put me up to that? She said, yeah, and I knew it then too, but I wanted you to know what their names was. Yeah. Then another time I was staying, when I was going to school there, I was staying with my grandfather, you know, Madonna stays there. And the horse had a colt that one day, so Rob Burke used to come across the field and me and him would walk to school. So of course, nothing to do, I had to show him the colt. My grandfather had five horses besides the colt. So I went in there and I was showing him the colt and patting it and everything, you know. So it was time to go to school. Rob goes out and locks me in the barn with them goddamn horses. And I was scared stiff because one of them was a horse by the name of Nellie. And she was cranky, and she, even out in the field, if she'd see you, she'd run me many a time to the granary, you know. I'd get in there and lock the door. She'd never bother my grandfather, but any strangers, she'd run after them both ears back, and she never caught me, but I don't know what she would do if she did catch me. And I was scared to hell in there. So my grandfather come out to feed them about an hour later, and let me out of the barn. And, I never so glad to see anybody in my life. The horses were tied, but you know, they were pulling back on the ropes. They could let go anytime.
Who were some of the older people when you were younger that were considered characters?
Oh, the Tights, Dan Tight, John and Jimmy, Jim Boney, Joe Murfro and that bunch. The Danny Barneys, the wood chopper. They were, you know, the generation that we are now.
Yeah.
They were all good people. They liked their booze and all had a good time.
There must have been a fair amount of moonshine on the island during Prohibition.
Yeah. Yeah, Christ, everybody made it. Even my dad made it for a while. Bob Burke, of course, you know, he got caught making it.
Mm-hmm.
It's been, I think, 6 months or a year in Milan or something.
Bob did?
Yeah. See, they had the boat would run in, and anytime they had a stranger was on the boat, they were supposed to blow the whistle twice.
Is that right?
And, yeah, and this day
Let you know,
let you
revenue
know
workers are coming.
well, that was what it was about. This day they didn't blow it twice, and somebody, no doubt it was some islander squealed on Bub because everyone was jealous of the other, you know, so we'd be selling the most, I suppose. And they did go up and raid Bub, and I think it was 6 months he got in Milan. But everybody I know there, Patty Early was making it. Like I said, the old man made it when we lived across from Salty's up there. We lived in that house for quite a while. Ray Gilden owned it then. That was my dad's aunt. Lindsay, a guy used to live way up from the East Side Road. You know, my dad used to take me up there because he'd get drunk and he couldn't drive the Model T back, so.
What did they make it out of? What are the ingredients?
He had corn. Yeah,
Did they make beer or whiskey?
Made
Or
both.
both?
Both beer and whiskey. But half of them that made it tracked the profit up.
Yeah.
I know. Johnny Green, they used to come up there. They'd come up there and they'd buy it by the shot, you know. I don't know if it was a quarter a shot them days or $1 for a bottle. But John W. would tell me, give me 50 cents, go put a couple bottles in the jumper, the horse and jumper them days. So I'm going, that'd be 50 cents for me, you know. But the old man seen me doing it, and he goes out and takes the whiskey back out of the jumper, and of course, I didn't know he'd done that, and I already had the 50 cents from John W. He goes to go, he ain't got no whiskey. And he thinks I didn't put it in the jumper. And Patsy Donio, we used to have some times with him up there. He was a character.
That wasn't true about what his father was supposed to have said when he brought his mother from there.
Oh, yeah, you probably got that one too. Some house was burning, you mean?
No, no. Oh, yeah, yeah.
He said there's one of me ships, a fire now or something.
He was telling her about the castles or the palace, the big places he did.
Yeah.
They were coming into the island, I guess there was a fire. And everything burned up anyhow before they landed.
Oh, I see.
I heard that story, but I didn't know how much of it was fact or fiction.
Yeah, Patsy had an old touring sedan. When I lived there across from Salty's, this guy lived in Salty's house, Bert Williams, him and his wife, and they had some, I don't know if it was their daughter or not, she was mentally impaired a little bit, you know what I mean? And he had a keg of whiskey or, mash down in the swamp. So I found out about it, like, snooping around there, and I told Patsy. We went in there and tasted it. Patsy said, about another day it'll be ready. So he had got a couple of these cream cans, 5-gallon cream cans, and we filled both of them up and get a dipper in one of them old touring cars. We went in, I remember it was that thrashing time. We were thrashing over at Frank Begone's. We had the 2 5-gallon cans of mash in the back of the car. And we had to leave the thrashing place because we're too drunk to do any good on it. So he blamed John Risker's lived down the next farm now. He blamed John for stealing his mash, Took the shotgun, was going to shoot John. And right after, we had a hell of a time convincing him he didn't do it. You could get drunk on that stuff without running it off, And then when you did run it off, all the corn was left. You could throw it out in the yard, and the chickens would be going around in circles from eating it, and the pigs or anything. They'd still get loaded on it too.
Did people have to settle their own disputes pretty much up there in those years? You talk about people taking shotguns to each other and so forth.
Yeah, there wasn't much law there of any kind. Big James Gallagher was constable there, but you'd have to kill somebody before he'd come out.
Now that's not the same as old James.
Yeah,
Old James.
young James is his father, but he wouldn't bother nobody. There was every August dinner there was a fight. You could figure always Patty Bunkney and Peter Johnson, they'd have one. Charlie Martin and Buddy White. They'd lock themselves in the garage and punch each other till they couldn't move. We'd be in the windows looking in at them, But they'd be fighting over nothing, just something to do.
You didn't get involved in fishing very much, did you?
Oh, I had one go at it, me and Leo Gallagher. Got a couple of perch nets. We set them out in the harbor. It was illegal to set them there. We used to set them there. And I think one time we got 3 perch and another time we got 9. I said, well, we ain't going to get rich this way, so we went out of business quick.
But I mean, you didn't work for Mike or Willie John?
No, Danny did, no brother. No. Willie John, I used to go out with the pond nets with him, and pick the fish livers. And then he used to have small fish that they put under the boards on the deck of the boat, so.
Illegal.
Illegal ones that you
Mhm.
could smoke and sell them, and he'd give you some, then he'd give you the fish livers. Me and Norman used to sell them. It worked like hell these for that, you know. Well, like I say, $1 them days was very easy to come by. Then I got working later years I worked mostly for Melky Road, running the snow plows and hauling gravel and working on that new road they put in from Sand Bay up to Vestige. You know, we put that in
From Mike Boyles.
there. Or Mike Boyles.
Mike Boyles at Sand
Beach
Bay.
to Vestige.
And that was a WPA project.
Yeah. And,
Was Holiday on that job or not?
he was on it for a while, but I remember one Friday, Sheely was driving the truck there, me and Holiday and Vesty. His dad was cutting poplars out of there and clearing the road, or clearing it out for to make the road. 3 o'clock, we were supposed to work till 5. 3 o'clock, Melky had already went to town. He told Sheely to pick up the stuff, and at 3 o'clock to come in. And he told Vesty, he said, when you get through working now, put your shovels and picks and stuff, axes away at your house. We'll have them for next week. This was happening. As soon as he got out of sight, Sheely, Holiday threw the shovel and everything down. Says, where in the hell are you going? Well, them guys are going. I sure as hell am going too. He said, I ain't going to work no more. You come back here. Nothing doing. He wouldn't come back either. Me and Bestie stayed there till quitting time. Them guys ain't going to work. I ain't going to work either.
Joe Gillespie says you did all that by hand pretty much.
Yeah.
No tractors or really dump trucks or
No, I had the dump truck. And Melky had another truck there, Model B. We used to, at Tom McCauley's Hill there, it was all clay. You had to pick that and then shovel it onto the truck and go patch the road. And then finally the county sent a tractor over. In the wintertime, we used that snow plow. The price used to be, I think it was about 9 feet plow on the front of it. You couldn't even get across it from Carl's house there. You couldn't even get through there. You'd have to wedge back and forth getting through there to open the roads with snow.
Seems like a lot more snow then than there has been.
God, you wouldn't believe it what the rest of it.
I remember Jack told us they made tunnels to get through, to cross the road.
Yeah.
You couldn't go up over the bank, but there was a tunnel through the snowbank in order to cross the road.
Yeah, I remember one time that me and Elston was on the tractor, and my dad had the truck with the small plow on it, and Melky was with him. We were up by Johnny Mooney's, and the push rod broke on the tractor. You know, it's only gave you 3 cylinders then, instead of 4 cylinders, which it needed to do what the work it was doing. So the old man said, well, I'm going back to town, to the county garage, and get a push rod. He would fix it, you know. So when he left, Melky stayed with us, and he said, go ahead and see what you can do with it. We didn't know no better, you know, so me and Elston plowing up by Johnny Mooney's there, back and forth, and Christ, we didn't get 20 feet. The old man come back, and he had a temper anyway, but he went at that Gus, and I didn't know for a while there who in the hell was running the show. But we could have broke the crankshaft by running it on 3 cylinders, you know, working it as hard as we were working. And what was making him mad was he'd be the one that would have to tear it down and fix it, not us. Of course, Gus was getting all frustrated, trying to calm him down. fixed and we threw that all right.
What was the process that you used to build those roads down there? And what steps did you take?
Oh, gravel, we had gravel pits all over now, wherever part of the road you're working on. There was gravel all over, you just, haul the gravel and then they had graders and graded in and,
We determined where the road was gonna be, the county.
well, they'll keep determining where it will be, wherever it told him.
Did you use horses to pull out the tree stumps and stuff?
Sure. Burke, Willie Smith, George Risker, John Risker, they all had teams worked on that.
How long did it take?
There's a couple of years anyhow.
Did you work the King's Highway too?
Kings Highway was in, and, patch it up, keep it going.
It was blacktop then?
Oh, no, it was just a regular gravel road, like Darkytown is now. It wasn't blacktop here, you must remember when they blacktopped it.
Well, I don't, but I know it wasn't that long.
It wasn't long ago, no. I remember when they blacktopped downtown. I worked on that.
What year would that have been?
Oh, God.
It had to be before 42.
It was in the 30s because I had to be around 18 then because I was driving the truck when they poured the tire over. You'd have the dump truck up and then you'd back her up like hell, so you spread the gravel light on. So I had to be 17 or 18 anyhow, I wouldn't have been, driving the truck then. So that would have been 36 or 37.
There are only 3 crew members left from the WPA, according to Jewel. You and Jewel and Frank Ackerman.
Yeah.
Jewel said Frank was a timekeeper, or?
No.
No?
He might as well have been. He would stay one day, if he made 20 feet along the ditch, sloping it with a shovel, and everything had to be just right. He was always doing something, but he wasn't doing nothing, he getting nothing done. And Melky looked at him and he said, Jesus, twice. What the hell am I going to do with that guy? What the hell are you going to do with him? He was working, but he wasn't doing nothing. But he got that slant down just perfect. A little bit of crumble in, it'd come out. He would make you nervous watching him. Remember, he had Mooney, Francis Mooney, Did you know him?
Yeah, I met him.
He was a real twister, that guy. Old Tight Gillespie, Joel's uncle. And we used to have lunch in a shanty we had there. Mooney said to me one day, why don't we doctor his sandwiches up? We all said egg sandwiches, I guess we all did those days. We didn't have much of a choice of what we had. But. So one day, Mooney said, bring some red pepper. I got Ma's red pepper, peppered and egg sandwiches. So it was that thick on them. Tight took a bite, rolled it around, and we were watching him, of course. He swallowed it and took another bite, and we could see the tears coming out. He said, Jesus, Mabel went heavy to the spices. And Mooney was just sitting there shaking, And another time, he liked jelly beans. Mrs. Vestment there, that house by meat market there. Who owns that house now? I think Milligan owned it one time.
You mean down by the Lloyd store?
No, up by Malloy's. The meat market, that house right next to it there.
Yeah, I know the house.
Does Price own that?
I think
Angie
I
Price?
think Boyle's own that.
Mrs. Vestment used to own it. She had a little store in there. And Christ, you'd get pennies worth of jelly beans, you'd get a nice little sack full, you know. So I used to, we were working over at Gull Harbor, and I used to get a sack full of them. I'd give Tite some. He liked them red ones. I'd pick them out and I'd give him some. So that Mooney again, he put me up to this stuff. He said, we'll get a box of Phoenix and tell Tite they're jelly beans. So we did. Next day I could go and give Tite the, and he noticed a different shape in them. I said, yeah, it's a new kind of guy. Give him a handful of them Phoenix. He ate them. The next day he come in, he looked like about 50 years older than when he went home. What's the matter, Tite Moon? He said, you don't look too good today. No, Christ, he said, I fertilized the 40-acre field last night. Yeah.
But Bob was gonna kill you for the firecracker.
Oh yeah, that was up at Tom McCauley's Hill. Bub had a pair of them coveralls with, he didn't have no butt on them anyhow, you know, and they were baggier than hell, and I had some firecrackers. And I went to throw one at his heels, you know, and went in his back pocket, blew it all damn packed up. Jesus, he turned around with that shovel, and the good thing there was 3 or 4 other guys with me, you know. And if he knew who did that, he would have hit them with that shovel. Scared Steph, you know, but he had no idea who threw it. I think it was Ed Butts and me and Charlie Pishner. Somebody else walking. He didn't know who in the hell to blame. A couple of days later, I told him I did it. I said, but I didn't mean it to go in your pocket, Bub. You know, I figured it was you. And I threw one behind Patty Early on the dock one day. I mean, you're jumping the lake only for somebody grabbed me that was in the lake and the boat was coming in. Yeah. And them were the kind of times we had nothing else to do. Some of them old guys were comical, you know, we had pulled something out of them.
Made your own fun.
Yeah. McGinnis was when we were putting them the lights poles through there, you know. McGinnis was the guy handling the dynamite. You know, go 2 places, a lot of rock and everything, he had dynamite. So every time he put a charge off, he'd fire in the hole, so you'd get behind someplace and watch for, you know. So that Bub, Sockety, and oh Craig, Clarence Palmer, and Ralph Palmer, and a whole bunch of us. Bub would see Sockety out in the open someplace where he couldn't find a place to hide, he'd holler, fire in the hole. Sockety would turn there, dig a hole, spinning around looking where to go, you know. Yeah.
What about old Tony going at you and Patsy about the horse? Stay up.
Oh yeah. He was a character too.
Don't-
We'd get up, I went up, Patsy used to get up the contract for cutting the wood for the church. So I went up to help him for, maybe I stayed a week or 3 or 4 days for the cutting the logs and hauling them to the church there by the priest's house where we'd cut them in the blockwood. So we don't need, I was staying with Patsy, so we don't need to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe 5 at the latest, go feed the horses and have everything ready so we could go to the woods. So Jesus, this one morning, we were all sitting behind the stove. It was colder than hell, and had the fire going, trying to get warm. He come in with a pail, flat as a pancake. He said, is there in here giggling and gaggling, and the goddamn horse is out there a-kicking and a-flinging, and I near got killed. I said, none of yous would have give a damn, and come out and see where I was even. Patsy said, it's good for you. Yeah. was a worker though, that fellow. You wonder how he could do it. You know, the way he'd party and drink, and he'd go and he'd work with anybody and do his part too. And more than his part.
Were the older generation pretty superstitious?
Well, I don't know if they're any more so than any of the rest of us were, you know. Like, how would you mean that?
Well, like the superstitions that might have been carried over from Ireland, you know, the families.
I can't recall them. I was saying this black cat stuff and walking under a ladder.
They didn't say leprechauns up there.
Huh?
No leprechauns on the island.
If there was something you could bring back from the past about the island, what would it be?
Oh God, I don't know what to say. I just thought the good times we used to have. I remember I used to wait every year when I lived at Ray Gilden's there across from Salty's for the Macaulays to come. They lived away back in the field at back of Salty's, you know, they have a summer place there. I used to look forward, but I can remember it every year, then we knew summer started, because they wouldn't come up to school or something. Then the parties would start up there. Every week, or maybe twice a week, we'd have a party. And, what's her name? Kitty McCauley.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Rob Burke. Rob was going with Kitty's daughter,
Which one, Phyllis?
Isabel.
Isabel.
And Isabel and this girl, Patty, not Patty Malloy's, Austin Malloy's. What was her name again? She was staying with Frankie Ackerman's father down across from Stanley's there. Stanley's, or across from Mike Mahaney's, Stanley's old house. Fred Ackerman. And Molly Ackerman. So I asked her for a date because there was a party up at Camp 5 where they had Ann Termeyer and Company. They had them buildings up there yesterday. They were having the dance and the party there. So Rob said, well, I'm going over to get Isabel and you will go down there and get Eileen Malone.
Eileen, yeah.
So we go get some beer and some wine, whatever we could get, of course, up to the party. Rob had a Model A Ford. The party wasn't over till about 2:30 or 3 o'clock, you know, before we started leaving for town. And coming down, goddamn, Rob didn't run out of gas. Probably around Camp 3. That time in the morning, you know, what the hell are we going to do? He said, well, the closest place is Pelkey's. And that's not close, you know, the Pelkey's from Camp 3. He said, you go down there, and I knew I was hoping. You go down there and get Pelkey to get you some gas and come back. Well, I had nothing else that I had to do, so I took off down the road and I see the car lace coming. Geez, that made me glad. I flagged down to where this was, and here it was Kitty coming looking for Phyllis. And then I wasn't so glad to go when I see who it was. And of course, she was madder than hell, but then she knew we were all right. We were into a wreck or something. So she went up and got Phyllis, took her right home, dropped me off at Pelkey's, and I got some gas. He took me up there to Rob at the car. But that was the last of that dating for a while, because I still had to take Eileen home. You know, we didn't get down to Nacogdoches till pretty near 5 o'clock in the morning. And there was some nuns staying there too. And she was afraid to go in. And of course, I ain't gonna go nowhere near the door with her. And I said, well, just tell them what happened. That's all you can do. And I said, tell them that you don't leave you to ask Kitty Floyd. So she got her chewing out, and I was grounded for a while too.
Did you ever use them to pull any stuff on Halloween?
Oh yeah, lovely. Tip the toilets over, you know. Soak the windows. Did somebody tell you about that?
I've heard stories.
Willie John moved his off the hole. And me and I think Ed Brutz and somebody else comes sneaking around, you know. Of course, no street lights in them days. Going up behind to push it over and right down the goddamn hole. Yeah. Oh, Christ, what a mess. Yeah. And we used to take them spools, you know, a thread coming, put notches in them, go in the window and pull it. It'd make a hell of a noise where we'd be sitting in there, we'd watch them, scared the living hell out of them, they'd be reading the book and going. Then Jules' uncle, maybe he told you this stuff. What was his name? Lived up there by. There was Tite and Cat and what was the other guy's name? Christ, I can get tip of my tongue. I can't see it. Lived right up there. That old log house still there. We went up in the roof and plugged his chimney up with rug bags and smoked them and pulled the doors so he couldn't get out of the house. Smoked them. He'd break a window to get air in the house. What the hell? I can't think of his first name. Yeah, they even put a wagon up on this top of this. Took it apart and put it together up in this house.
How'd you get it down?
It's up to him to get it down.
When did electricity first go down?
37, I think, wasn't it?
I think
38.
that's what Joe said.
I remember Davy from Ready Power was up there. I remember when they turned the lights on. Mary Sam's was where Wojan's place is there. She had a house there. They had a big party there. All the people that worked on that. Everybody had to give up and give a speech. Holy Christ, give them a speech. I don't know yet what they said, but it couldn't have been much. And the funny thing of it was to found out I wound up working at Ready Power for 33 years. And Davy was my boss, the superintendent there. Building the same generator sets we put on now.
Did they ever use those on the island?
Well, they did here a few years back when
When
the cable broke.
Yeah.
They used them for a while. I don't know if the original ones are any of them running or not now. He did have one of them going.
They certainly can't supply the whole island now.
Well, probably not, but a lot of it.
Oh, they couldn't supply it.
That's the only thing I miss about that. I liked it better 25 years ago. I think people were friendly.
Yeah.
They come on the boat now, of course. They go there someplace and stay there. You don't know them, you don't see them until they leave the game.
Yeah, Holiday used to come to town. First, you could hear him coming with the car.
That
Up
blue
above
goose.
that blue goose, up above the top of the church hill, you could hear him coming. And first thing he'd look me up. Well, I got 50 cents. Said you? Well, if I didn't, I wind it up some way. We'd get a bottle. It was only $1 for 90 cents for Seagram 7 Crown then. And it seems after we got that bottle that we could drink all night someplace. You know, we'd run into different places that something was going on. They had lots to drink, and it's just a matter of getting the first spot. Remember old Pete Napon? He had a horse named Charlie. And they up the country all night. He and him was good friends at times. They asked Pete to use the horse and the sleigh so we could go to the party. I had to buy him a pint of whiskey, and it had to be 7 Crown. That was the expensive whiskey then. It was 90 cents. Old Quaker was 69. Golden Wedding was around that too, and Green River.
Is that a pint bottle?
Pint bottle. So I said, yeah, Pete, I'll get you a pint. So I'd get a pint of Old Quaker, and I'd pour it in the Seagram 7 Crown bottle. And I'd go to Pete, and I'd make believe I was just opening it, because of course it'd be open. I want to have a little short, a little shot, Pete. So I'd take a drink and then give it to him. With the Old Quaker, he never knew, you know, it wasn't 7 Crown. He thought he was drinking the 7. Get the horse, and a bunch of us go up to Nate's or Shang's or someplace.
Donuts.
Huh?
Up to Donuts.
Not very often to Donuts.
How
We
did
go
Holiday?
to Shang's or Nate's because they had a piano, see. What were you going to say?
How did Holiday get his nickname?
Oh, well, best is to get him up to go to work, you know. There's no work today. Why in the hell ain't there no work today? It's a holiday. So that's how he got his name, because when he wouldn't want to go to work, he'd tell Vesty it's a holiday. A goddamn holiday is it now? That's all it is. It's a holiday. He was harder than Jewel to get up in the morning. I used to have to leave a half hour early to get him out of bed in the morning to go to work on the WPA.
Joe.
Yeah, he didn't want to be woke up fast. He wanted to be woke up slow, he'd say. Mary Ann would be hollering at him, and I'd go up and sitting on the edge of his bed, you know, to get him to get up. I said, the damn truck's going to be here in 5 minutes, Jewel. Half the time he'd miss it.
I remember Kathy, it was just a little bit of a company.
Yeah. He was a comical guy. Him and Mary Ann, I had them going all the time. We used to play smear every night.
Yeah.
And penny ante poker when we had the pennies. So me and Ket would always be partners, and Mary Ann or Barney Mooney or Dominic or what's his name, Turner, whoever would be there would be her partner. And we'd bid and we'd get set. I'd tell Ket, well anyhow we had the low, Ket. We didn't have it at home. So Mary Ann started counting up the high, low, jack, the game. I said, no, we had to say, no, we had the low. Where'd you have the low? And he'd look at me, see that? The goddamn paw jeans. He said. And all I had to do is tell him. He'd never catch on to me. I'd tell him at the 7 or 8 times a night that we had the low, and we didn't, you know. Just to him and Mary Ann to get going through the cards. Where is your low?
Somebody else likes to do that.
Then playing poker, and like I say, when we had the pennies, the deuce is wild. And I played all winter there with Ket, Mary Ann, and Barney Mooney. And of course Dominic. Turner, and I never seen the deuce all winter. No, and I was the youngest of the bunch, you know. I didn't have no idea that they were palming the deuces, Barney, Mooney, and Turner. And them, you know. So I finally caught on to them, but it was a lot later than
Last
before I
time.
knew it. Never seen the deuce at all. And Dominic, you'd have two pair, which is all that counts in semi-card poker, you know. And Dominic would call out 3 pairs. You know? And he couldn't figure out why the 3 pairs shouldn't beat the 2 pairs. You know? It's no good, Dominic. No.
3 pairs.
3 pairs. You
People played cards a lot.
know? Yeah, that all winter long we played every night at Cats. We played every night. And I don't know how I got in there. I was the only young one there, you know. Cat and Mary Ann were just like my mother and father to me.
Is that when you lived right across the street there from the
No,
track?
I lived down where we do now there.
Oh,
And I lived up at Bert's before we moved down where we were.
you're in that house on the hill there now, what, 51
I think,
years, 52 years? Audrey was a baby.
Must be. I remember when we moved that.
She was born in Uncle Bert, where Uncle Bert lived.
Yeah.
And then you moved to the hill when she was a baby, and I think she's 52 now. Catherine was 50.
Yeah, Peter Johnson and John Risker's team moved that building. It used to be the Protestant church.
The house that,
That my mother owns.
is that right? Oh. Where was that located originally?
It was down by, across the road from the Protestant cemetery. Just across the road from it there.
Where Carol Lee's place was, or
No,
on the other
across
side?
the other side.
Oh,
Going
There's a
towards
church there
like
now.
in back of Ritchie's, like in
Mhm.
that area there,
what church is there now?
There's an Episcopal church there.
yeah. So we, team of horses, 2 teams of horses, and rollers headed on the big 8x8s, you know. We already had the basement dug.
The Jones people?
Yeah.
Or Danny?
Me
It's a
and-
family joke.
Me and Bob and McGinnis dug that basement. McGinnis put all the cement and the cement blocks on it. Me and Bob had his horse with that scoop, you know, we scooped all that out. But it was quite a job to set
You
that
had the
house up on
basement?
that.
Built before you put the
Yeah,
house
we
on?
had the foundation
The
around.
foundation, yeah.
Foundation to set down there. But I remember a couple nights before we got it on the foundation, it was blowing, and the house, we were afraid, you know, was gonna let go. But got it on there all right.
And it was as big as it is now at that time.
Yeah.
Oh, but
Oh,
the
we put the
shed.
shed on the
The
back,
shed.
yeah.
So it was a pretty big building to move down the road then.
Yeah, it was a good sized building.
Did you put in the second floor then in the stairway, or was that in there?
No, the second floor was just an attic. Well, we finished it off, but the stairway up there, Woody Riskers put that up.
The partition between the living room and the kitchen?
And me and my dad and I. But the Celotex, they called it them days, we put that on the ceiling and the walls. Partitioned it off, Woody Riskers cut the stairway into it.
And that was 1940?
Oh, no, it was before then.
What, 52 years ago would have been, what? 39?
Well, it might have been,
It was before you went in the service.
yeah, I know, it might have been 39 or 40.
Audrey was born in, I think she's gonna be 53 this year.
How old is Ann gonna be?
That Ann was born in 42. So she's
Oh,
gonna
she
be
wasn't born
49.
yet.
No, and Kathleen was born in the house.
Okay, so that though, that was,
Audrey, Anthony's gonna be 51 this year. Audrey's gonna be 53. So I'd say it's 52 years, that would make it, what, 39? You weren't there too long then after the house, after they moved in, because you went in 42. You're gonna go sailing instead of the army.
yeah, I left for Chicago. I'm going to work one morning to the county road garage. Had my lunch with me. And it was in March. And who comes up down by Mrs. O'Brien's? Comes along but Bub and Don Burke. And they were, Bub was taking Don over to the Coast Guard station to go sailing. And I already had my notice to go in the Army April the 8th, me and Holiday. So Don said, you know, I've been thinking. He said, you get on the boat, you won't have to go in the Army, you're accepted, you know, which the sailors were. He said, why don't you come with me and I'll get you on. Go to the, get a seaman's tickets or whatever it was. I said, oh Christ, I don't know. I said, I ain't got no money to go to Chicago or anything anymore. I got the money. Come on, let's go. And goddamn if I didn't go with him. Didn't say nothing to my mother or dad or nothing. Got down there. Of course we were drinking. Started and got to Charlotte where we started. And went down to see Saucer and Leo Gallagher and Tootsie Brutz were on the boat, fitting her out, you know. And that boat was about 60 foot high, and I could only climb about 20 feet. And at that time, so they were hollering at me, come on up, come on up. And I looked, nothing doing, I can't get up there. I told Don, I said, no goddamn way am I going sailing. I couldn't get in that boat no damn way. So we went over to Mamie Cass's, and Bill Green was there. He was the captain on one of the freighters here. And of course, all winter long he stayed drunk. When he went on the boat, that was it. So all I was doing was a messenger boy for him running to the liquor store. And he even told me, he said, you're going to go sailing? He said, I'll get you on if you want to go. I said, no, I don't think so. Seen them boats and I don't want no part. So went on to Willie John and Norm. And they were coming back to the island from Chicago. So I asked them if I ever ride back. Sure, sure. They were leaving the next day and I left with them. Norman, we had that old Nash that Norman was driving. And this must have been 6, 7 years after I worked for the House of David. So,
yeah, it must have been because
anyhow, we're coming back.
you were 23 then.
Around Indiana someplace. And Willie John said to Norman, now, you get around the bend up here a ways, you're going to see a sign that says eat. I want you to stop in there. No, I ain't hungry. Well, none of us were hungry. Well, I want to stop there. I want to show Corneil something. So, okay, we goes in there. And Willie John marches to the back of the kitchen. Who does he come out with but Swafford? He was cooking there, the guy that was running High Island. Oh, Christ, you could have floored both of us. Neither one of us ever expected to see the other one.
It's about how many times go to the army.
Yeah, one time. But then sick home, I was sick. That trip to Chicago near killed me. So all they were doing there was drinking all night long at getting Cass's. All the sailors hung out around there, partying. And I told Holiday on the way that I said, I'm never gonna pass that physical. I said, my heart's going up my throat now like this. He said, mine is too. I said, well, I don't think we're gonna make it. So we went for a physical. There's a whole bunch of other people there too. One Indian from the island. He was the guy, brother of the guy that Swapper killed. Well, I can't think of his name. And he's the only one that didn't pass. Me and Holiday passed.
Where did you have to go for your physical?
Went to Fort Custer,
On Battle Creek?
Battle Creek. And next day, my head was pounding and pounding and pounding. I said, let's go to sick call. Oh, they said, okay. So we went. I told him I thought I had heart trouble. I said, I could feel my heart jumping all over me and everything. Holiday told him the same thing. We thought we'd get out of it. The doctor examined us. Says, nothing wrong with your heart. You've got good, strong heart. Gave us some aspirin. You'll be all right. Just go back to your duties. We stayed there for 6 weeks. And I was on KP every goddamn morning for a week. They come in. I slept next to the Holiday, the bunk next to him. Every day at 4 o'clock they come and get me for KP for 1 week and never touched him at all. Now you figure that one out. I remember the big mess hall they had. Peeled the potatoes, scrubbed the floor. I got through scrubbing the floor one time, and I'm leaning against the wall smoking a cigarette. The first sergeant or the sergeant, whatever it was, come over. What are you doing? I said, I just got through scrubbing the floor. I was smoke. Scrub it again. So I was going to scrub it again. That's the way they treated you. They were rookies.
Where were you stationed?
Well, then they shipped us from there. I took a basic training in Louisiana. 13 weeks down there.
Did Holiday go down there too?
No, they shipped him out for me.
You guys staying right close together.
We both put down the same things we done on the island, the same thing. I worked for the County Road Commission. Did you repair your own equipment? What did you do? Drove snow plows, drove graders, graded roads, and all of that stuff, you know, which I did, but Holiday didn't do none of it, but he put the same thing down I did, thinking we'd stay together.
Yeah.
And they put him in the medics and me in the engineers. He went to Hawaii and I went to India. Yeah.
Oh, we can't get much further apart than that.
Yeah. And I couldn't get no farther unless I was coming back. That's as far as you can go.
Yeah.
Then I went from India to the Burma, on the Burma Road. That's when they were building it. I was running a bulldozer on it. And then I was sick of that and tired of it. It was a dangerous damn job anyhow. So I complained about my back. They goddamn them, they didn't put me on a truck, which was worse than the bulldozer. We were taking, after we got the road finished, or passable, it was, you never could finish it. The monsoon season, there'd be mud that deep in it, you know. They put a truck from, we'd pick up a convoy of trucks to take them to China and leave them there. Then they'd fly us back, you know, get another load and leave them there. I made 11 trips. It was 1,100 miles from Burma to China on the road, and you made 100 miles a day. Up as straight as far as you could see, and then down. And the worst part of it was the valley was on the driver's side. You know, if you had to jump it, the truck would come right over.
Yeah.
Which we lost a few of them too. Then the slides from the mountain, there was only a one-track road. You go around some of them on 2 wheels, with your heart right in your mouth, you know. Then, the last trip I was on, I got back, and my outfit had been sent back to the States, and I was in China. So I had to stay there about 4 more months before there was another rotation, just by being over there on that last trip. Yeah, Holiday got in the medics, me and the engineers. We were both road workers. So you see how the Army works.
Yeah. So you didn't return to the island after your stint in service was up?
I went back there for a while, and I came back to Detroit. And where'd I get the job first? At Northern
Chrysler.
Engineers.
Oh, yeah, Northern Engineers.
That was a place made cranes and all that stuff. Overhead cranes and all that. I worked there till there was a layoff. Of course, I was the first one to get it. I was the last hired in there.
46.
Then we got married.
Went to Chrysler's.
Yeah.
Midnight shift.
Me and, before I got married, though, I was staying at Mary Johnson's. And I wasn't working then at all. Couldn't find a job. They were hard to get then after the war. So me and Pat Burke could go every day looking for work. And I found out he wasn't looking for a job at all. He was just trying to get me to work. So we'd go to all these damn warehouses and everything. We'd unload trucks and everything. No, we ain't hiring. So somebody said they're hiring at Chrysler's. So I
Was
said,
after we were there.
Was that
We went to
afterwards?
Chrysler's and we went there in February of 46.
yeah, that's right, it was a month after. So, I said, they're hiring at Chrysler's. Well, you go and see. And if they're hired, then I'll go too. So I went and I put my application in and they called me. And Pat said, oh Jesus, getting close to shipping out time. I said, I don't think I'll bother. But he was glad to get me a job. So I had money to spend. I'm tired of sponging on. So I worked there for 4 years, I think. Balancing crankshafts for the cars.
Midnights.
But I missed more time than I worked. Them sailors had come and Patsy and when you miss they only had the 2 balancers on each shift. They would really mess them up, and that foreman would say, I'm going to shoot you. What happened to you? I said, I wasn't feeling good. You mean you were feeling too good? But he stuck with me all the time. But then I got, they had that 120-day strike. 100 and what?
1950,
Yeah.
from January till May.
Yeah, so I went to, I remember Dave telling me at Ready Power that when he was superintendent there, if you get out of the service, as I was on furlough, and we were out on the parties, you get out of service, you ever need a job, come see me. So I got thinking, so this strike, you don't know when it's going to be over, so I went down to Ready Power, and Jesus, Dave said, ain't much I can do for you. He said, I got been laid off and they're in the union, you know. He said, if I hire you, I get in trouble. He said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. You go out there in the morning, go to work. He said, if they don't say nothing, just go. So I went the next morning, went in there. Put me to work with a guy named Charlie Roddy, or Jewel knows him real good. And we just at that time started building air conditioners, engine-driven air conditioners. So I worked with him for, I guess, about 28 years or 29 years.
I don't remember what year.
Then he was up in age, and that time,
Yeah, I don't know when he went to Florida.
they finally let him. He was really the one that engineered all of that. I worked there for 33 years. But nobody ever said nothing about the other guys being laid off, so. Of course, I knew Dan Green worked there, and I knew him good. Bill Rorbeck was his chief steward.
There've been a bunch from the island there.
He
Jewel
said
was there. And
they
Gene
were Jewel,
Cunningham.
not when I was
Not
there.
when you were there, but Jewel had been there, and Gene Cunningham and Roger
But,
Research.
that's, Rorbeck told me, the chief steward, he said, the only way I'll say anything, he said, there's some of the guys that are laid off come to me about it. He said, then have to let you go till we call them back. Then they can hire new men after all the old men are back. Nobody ever said a word. Well, there ain't much more than I can tell you, I don't think.
How much he loves the island.